Can indeed, yep.
Great, and you can hear me okay?
Perfect, yep.
Good stuff. Okay. Well, thank you, Matt and the SAP user group, and good morning, everybody. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the agenda that we're going to run through today. So I'm just quickly going to give you a kind of overview of master data lifecycle management and strategy, and where Maestro sits as a solution within the kind of SAP product portfolio. And then we're going to run through a demonstration. We're going to concentrate on customer. I think the last couple of demos we've done material masters, and we're going to concentrate on customer master processing today. We're going to show you, with a mixture of user interfaces, we're going to show you a little bit of SAP Fiori. We're going to show you some stuff around SAP screen personas, and obviously the native SAP GUI. We're also going to show you how Maestro can handle multi-processing. So the example here is, I'm creating a sold to, a new customer, but I also want to create multiple ship tos at the same time if I've got the relevant information to hand. So we'll go through all that process, and we'll go through the different UI technologies. We'll quickly show you there's some new stuff from SAP. So for those of you that know, and I think we've got a webinar end of next month around this new UI5 engine that comes with SAP screen personas. So traditionally it's always been Fiori apps, but now there's a new kid on the block which is part of that kind of family, and we'll show you some of that stuff. And then we'll dive into some of the typical value drivers. So it's great for us that we can show you the product around Maestro and what it does, but it's very important that we also explain some of the value drivers associated with it. And then lastly, we'll show you where we're taking the product in terms of Maestro, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So, okay, just very quickly, some of you guys out there probably know who we are. A lot of you probably won't, but we're a UK company, formed 2012. And I guess the X in Bluestonex is around user experience and innovation. So that's kind of what we originally set up the company to do. So we're a build partner for SAP, so we build things like Maestro, but we're also a service partner as well, focusing on core ERP and user experience, so Fiori and things like that. So we're based in the West Midlands, in a little town called Oswestry in Shropshire, and we've also got an office out in India as well. And the one thing that we always say, what's different about us, well, we actually employ designers as well as SAP certified consultants, and that helps us in our innovation and user experience. I won't dwell on what we actually do in terms of the different departments that we have within the company, but we focus on these three areas. ERP is what you typically expect, so we run help desk, we do the whole ERP consulting. But within our enterprise user experience, so this is slightly different to other offerings out there, is, as I said, we focus quite heavily on human-centered design. We do a lot of work around human empathy and observation of users to deliver better applications, such as SAP Fiori custom apps and also screen personas flavors. And then lastly, our digital practices. So this is all about innovation. And Maestro is one of those products that has been delivered. These are some of the guys that we've worked with recently over the last 12 to 18 months. Maestro, for those of you that don't know, is still quite a fledgling, kind of new product, but we've got some good reference sites now, and it's building momentum all the time and becoming even more and more functional in terms of the functionality, the richness of functionality. So just to put this and set the scene and talk about why did we do it and what are the gaps that we're trying to fill within the SAP portfolio. Well, it is very much strategic, but also, it's going to deal with a lot of the kind of day-to-day problems that people have with data. Now, this is the typical data lifecycle that you'll see. So you've got the stages at the top here, where we've got people trying to understand data and where it sits, and that's like things like profiling data. Then you've obviously got integration. So where does that data sit? Where are the data sets? What does it need to hook into? And then you get into areas such as cleansing. So that might be legacy data, or it might be merger and acquisition data that we need to cleanse, or ongoing runtime data within your ERP, and so on. So managing that data, associating documents with that data, and then lastly, kind of end of life and archiving data following, you know, the various regulations that you've got. So across that spectrum, SAP obviously has a lot of solutions there already. And the reason why we show this is because, you know, we are an SAP fan, but we noticed quite a gap in the market. Obviously, the one sitting in the middle there is SAP MDG, but there's these other things, data services, information steward, all of which are very good solutions. But what comes with those very good solutions is complexity, additional resources that you need, cost, licenses, so on and so forth. So what we decided to do 3 years ago when we started researching the area and prototyping and building products, we're not trying to be a one solution that fits all, but we are covering all the bases with Maestro, and you'll see that from the demo. But where we're really focusing on is this whole review and cleanse and manage, associate and archive. We are doing little bits around understanding data and obviously integrating data, because we're working with software like Salesforce, for example, where we can integrate information. But what we're not going to do is build Maestro into something that's going to compete directly with some of these larger software systems out there. Maestro is very good at what it is, and hopefully you'll see that in a second. So that's a little bit about data lifecycle management and kind of the strategic view of where the product is going. Every enterprise has similar problems around data, and we're going to show you a kind of pragmatic view of you know, a typical customer master data request and its population of data in SAP. So in terms of where we started, the initial driver behind Maestro was we had a couple of customers that come to us looking to replace some of these things on the left-hand side. So, you know, we see a lot of email, Excel, SharePoint processes and systems that are in place that are managing legacy and, you know, live data that gets tapped into SAP. Some people have, you know, interfaces and things like Windshuttle that they'll run, but a lot of the time there's a lot of manual keying in of information to SAP. So we decided to build Maestro. So we'll cover some of these things. What we've got within the solution, we've got some best practice templates. We'll explain about templates. We've got the built-in workflow. We cover every angle in terms of SAP. So any object, whether it's a standard object, like you can see there, or custom objects, we cover. And what Maestro actually wraps around all these objects and functionality is the fact that you've got governance and audit throughout the process. Now, thinking from a strategic point of view as well, some of you guys might already be there. So we already have an S4 HANA customer, but obviously when you start to look at that migration, data is going to become an important aspect to that. So, you know, there is justification here for harmonizing that data, maybe reducing that footprint of data before you move to S4. So yeah, we have an S4 customer already on board with us, so the solution works across both, and it's the same principles throughout. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the cleanse application, which we're going to show you. So right, let's talk about the solution and jump straight into a demo. So to explain it, Maestro, its core engine will sit within your core ERP, whether that's cloud, whether that's on-premise. It's normally deployed via 3 transports, and within those 3 transports is a kind of engine that covers all the master data objects that you would typically require. So it has its own inbuilt workflow, and I guess one of the drivers that we see is around you're able to create your own kind of custom forms to pull together data. So you can start stripping out, removing forms such as Excel or SharePoint forms that you might be using and start bringing it into SAP. We'll talk about business rules and governance because that's one of the powers of Maestro. You can write a lot of business rules in there. And the good news is you don't need to be a programmer or an ABAPer to actually do this. It's all quite simple IMG configuration, which we might get time to show you, Feroz. I think you might touch on some of this stuff. So what we're going to go through, and this is how Maestro works, whether you're changing data, extending data, creating data, or cleansing data. You'll typically follow this process, which is a request. So somebody will create a request. So in this example, we're going to create a request for a customer, and then it's going to kick off a series of tasks based on my business process. So this is why the configuration aspect is quite important. Every business is different. So based on that process, we're going to kick off some business rules, maybe some governance, and some input of data. And then finally, someone within that master data team or a data owner is going to review that request, approve it, and it's going to do the updates in SAP. So it can be an update directly to SAP because Maestro lives there, or we can send that information out to other subsequent systems as well. So it might be SAP systems or non-SAP systems. As I said, Salesforce is a classic one where you could receive a request from Salesforce and actually output something to Salesforce at the end. So this is a typical customer process where you have, let's take, for example, an account manager asking for a new customer. You could have a master data team then picking up that request and approving it, and then it might get farmed out in terms of distributed workflow to the business to start populating data. You might want to involve credit management people, and then finally approve the customer that's going to be created in SAP. This is all done via Maestro. The important thing at the end there, not only are we just dealing with objects and creating master data objects, but it's actually more process orientated. So things like, output. So I've got a new customer, I might want to set up a new customer price list, or I might want specific delivery documentation for that customer, and it's an output, and I need to tag that on at the end. So all this can be brought in within Maestro because it's process orientated, and that's the differentiator. So that's a distributed workflow. This is a simple one, and this is what we're going to show you. And quite simply, I'm an end user. I need to create a new customer. I'm going to go in. I'm going to use a Fiori app to actually request this customer. So I'm going to go in, enter some information, and then Feroz, he's the data clerk in this example. He's going to review the data that I've entered, ratify it across some business rules, and then he's going to update the customer master. And in this instance, Maestro can also do the credit management because I've entered it as part of the create request. So this is what we're pretty much going to follow, something nice and simple, so that we don't kind of confuse anybody on the webinar. Okay, so let me just log in here and I'll just refresh my browsers. So just to explain, I've got my Fiori Launchpad here. For those of you that don't know, SAP Fiori UI5 technology is responsive, so it's tablet, mobile, desktop. It's the kind of go-to strategy from SAP. And I'm also going to show you, well, this is a web GUI, but we're actually going to show you Maestro in its SAP Screen Personas format. So basically what we use are flavors, which we'll come on to in a second as well. So these are typical flavors. It's almost like plug and play, like PowerPoint, where I can drag things, hide things, just make them a little bit more sexy look and feel, and obviously you can do all your branding associated with it. So this is SAP Screen Personas, but I'm going to start with SAP Fiori. So this request is actually me as an end user requesting a new customer. It's not the name of the customer or anything like that. Based on the authorization that you're given within Maestro, you'll see a list of different objects. So again, it can be customer, could be vendor, could be anything in there. Templates. So in here, again, the user might have a defaulted template, and the template is quite important. We'll come back to this later on, but essentially, the template is the thing that holds all the business rules and the process together. So if you can imagine, if I'm a guy, I'm working in sales region 1, I might just have one template, and that template holds all my kind of default values, conditional rules, and things like that. Now, the interesting thing with Maestro is this area around dates and SLAs and things like that. So at this point, I'm going to put in a date here. So I'm actually expecting my customer to be created for this date. Now, it could be tomorrow, but obviously within Maestro, there are SLAs set against tasks, and tasks will have lead times. So again, from a reporting point of view, you can track where you are in the process. So I can have a look at, you know, what data has been requested and where it is in its life cycle, which is quite important. So that's my request. I'm asking for a new customer. I'm asking for a new sold to. But interestingly here, the template that I'm doing is allowing me to create multiple accounts. So in this example, I'm going to create a sold to, and I'm going to create, obviously, Maestro will take care of all the other partner functions, which is the ship to, bill to, and payer. But I'm also going to create an additional 2 ship tos. Okay, so that's a little bit different, because in a lot of organizations, when you get a customer request come in, you might have 10 additional ship tos to create at the same time. So we're just going to kind of show you that. So this within Maestro now is showing me the process. So I've got an approval stage and I've got an update to the credit limit. Now again, that's configurable. Okay. Now in the details tab is where I'm going to start entering some data. So Maestro will know based on your number ranges, and it's the same if it was a vendor. It's going to populate some of these fields based on business rules, and I'm going to start putting in some address data. Sorry about my typing, not the quickest. But this is why Fiori's is pretty good. I mean, again, just to reiterate, this is all configurable. So if I don't want to show these screens, for example, these fields, I can hide them within configuration. When I launch the app will have read the configuration and just show me what I need to chuck to the user, which is great. So it's a kind of dynamic Fiori app. So what we've done here as well, based on configuration, is the fact that we've actually consolidated a number of views. So within a customer master, same with a vendor master, you can consolidate company code, sales area, different views together on the one screen, which is really good. They're all F4 drop-downs like you'd expect to see in SAP. So our apps actually read all this, and this is being driven by Maestro. So it's just a case of filling in whatever data I actually need. I'll get an error if I miss something. And then at the very end here, so I'm already creating my customer account group here, which is a sold to, but it's a Z. I'm going to create some additional ship tos at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to say I need 2 additional ship tos. I'm just going to pop the address in here as well. Okay, check that data. I'm happy with that. I'm going to put in my 3rd ship to. Okay, so what I've done here, just to kind of explain where we got to, I've entered the address data for the main sold to, and I'm adding 2 additional ship tos. Now, the clever bit about Maestro, obviously, when we go to the next stage, if somebody's going to review all this data, and it's going to run through some business rules. A lot of the business rules have already come into play here. You can see some of the default entries. What Maestro is going to do is going to pass it on to the next guy, who in this case is Farrell's, who's acting as a data clerk. He's going to review that data, and he's going to approve it or reject it. And eventually Maestro will create that sold to. He will create those ship tos, and he will also do the assignment of the ship tos to the sold to. So it's doing some quite clever stuff via its kind of configuration, which we processed here. So let's just create. Okay, I've created a request. And on that note, Faraz, I'm going to pass back to you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Just to confirm if you guys can see my screen.
Yep, I can see that. There's no bother.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Good morning, all. Thank you for joining the webinar today. So as Dan was explaining about the process he has created, I'm a data clerk or data steward in this case. I'm going to review my task and then approve the data. Now, one thing that's going to happen is as soon as Dan has created his requesting for the customers, the first thing going to happen is a workflow engine's going to kick in and it's going to send an email message. That's an Outlook integration with Maestro. It's an out-of-box Maestro workflow engines. It's not integrated to business framework within a standard SAP. So as soon as the request is there, it's available for me to process. I'm going to get an email message saying there is a task for me to go and process it. So either I can go and look at my email and click on the link and that will take me to the persona screen, or I could just simply log on onto my Launchpad. Now, the screen you have in front of you is my SAP screen personas. So you can see my Launchpad here. Depending upon the authorization, obviously I see what I'm authorized to. Now, you can see clearly on my task list, there are 2 open tasks against my name. So what I'm going to do now is going to click on that, and that will take me to this open task list. So just a quick overview of how the task list looks like. So because I kind of an administrator here, so I get to see both the tasks, which is check and approve data, but at the same time, I'm able to see step number 20, which is update credit limits. So if there were more steps, I would see obviously more steps in there. But in a distributed environment, suppose if I am not going to be doing my credit limits, obviously I would not see the step, and then somebody else would see the step. But the clever thing in Maestro is, again, these dependencies are there. So you can see that step 20 is clearly dependent on step 10. So even if I try and process step 20 now, it won't let me do it unless I've done step 10. And there is nice target dates here, so it knows when I need to do it. And also there are pretty cool functions here, like a normal workflow functions. You can send reminders. You can send the task for a review. You can reassign it to somebody else. You can forward the task, and you can escalate the task. But as I said, Maestro engine, workflow engine, has got its own rules to escalate tasks and so on, which we can go into the details later on. So let me start with processing this data. So the request from a requester has come in. It's sitting in my inbox, which is in standard SAP. So just to show you how the standard SAP GUI looks like. So that's my open task in standard GUI, but this is my few SAP persona screen. Okay, so I'm going to log on and then click on this. That's going to take me to this task. Now, the screen you see here is obviously an SAP persona screen here. The look and feel of the Maestro data gathering or the approval is same across the board. What I mean by this is whether you're doing a customer object or a material object or any finance object, you see a consistent data gathering screen. Now, the advantage of doing this is obviously you don't have to train up people using different screens for different objects. Now, on the left-hand side of the panel, you see here is the views that I need to populate, and on the right-hand side, you have all the fields that I need to populate. These field definitions and everything has come from the initial Fury app that was created, and on the left-hand side, I see all the views. So some of the quick features of this Maestro is obviously you can define your own F1 health screen on each of these fields. So you can see that I've got own search helps in there, and also you could write your own instructions against this view. So these are all configurable in there. Now, what as an administrator I'm going to do is just navigate through this list. Okay, I'm just going to review the data, mark the status as complete. Okay, all I'm doing in this case is just reviewing the data. Now, if I need to, I could also change any data if I need to. So I'm just going to quickly run through this, mark this. Just bear with me while I'm doing this. I just need to show you.
I mean, what we're actually showing here is the ability for people to go in, review data, and amend data if they have the authorization. But in the blue sky, you know, the end goal really is to have Maestro populate as much of the data as possible through the business rules, which we'll talk about in a little while.
So you can see that most of these fields has been pre-populated based on the business rules. So all the approver is doing now is kind of doing a mass processing, but at the same time checking the data. Now, one of the features, as Dan was explaining earlier, was about kicking in the business rules. So all of this has been pre-populated, but obviously based on the business rules. But you could also write your own data conformity rules. So in this case, what has happened is I've got the incorrect pricing group here. So the moment the approver tries to do that, he gets this message. So what I'm going to do now is I don't know what the pricing group is required here. So what I could do is at this stage, I could just save it and then send it for a review to a reviewer. And I say, you know, please check the pricing group. Now, this is going to a predefined reviewer groups, but you can also send it to a user ID in SAP if you know the user ID. Now, at this stage, the request has been submitted and has been forwarded for review. I click on OK. This goes, if I go back to my review task list now, you can see an additional task has been created for me now, which is step number 9. And it kind of clearly builds in dependencies because I cannot do a 10 unless this has been reviewed. So as a reviewer now, I could go in there and then have a look at the data, have a look at the comments which has been put in against it, to say, you know, please check it. But also at the same time, as I said earlier, I also get an email notification saying I have a reviewer task which I need to complete. So as a reviewer now, I'll go in and I'm just going to update this sales pricing group because I know that the pricing group is wrong in there. So I'm just going to mark them status complete. I'm just going to quickly update that pricing group here. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is save the data and say review complete. And then I can put the comments in there. When I do that, it goes back to the approver now. So the approver is in this case. I click on this, and then I carry on. So all I'm going to do now is quickly sift through the data. If I want to, again, as an approver, I can look at all the comments in there. But I'm just going to go ahead and complete the remaining of the view. So what I'm actually doing is just checking this and saying, yeah, that's fine. It's fine, because this has all come from business rules. So literally, I'm not doing anything in here, because most of the times you'll either have all the business rules or some logic written into this.
Yeah.
So,
and it's all very much dependent on your business process and your rules, because some businesses, you know, their data collection and data approval steps might be literally one screen, one form, and an approval stage. We're just kind of showing you the capability of the solution.
Well, yes. So once I'm done with this one, I'm going to click on save. So everything then goes green here. You can see that all my views are. So by the way, these views corresponds to the tabs or the tasks you have in standard SAP, like MMO1, you have sales view, data view, company code. So again, these are all configurable, all the views and the fields you see, the labels and everything. Now, once I've saved my data, I'm going to click and approve, because now I need to go ahead and create this. Once I do that, it says yes, and then it kind of creates customer master data inside SAP. So you can see I'm expecting it to create 3 customers. So it created these 3 customer codes in there. So 1077. So if I quickly go and show you the XDO3 screen now. Okay, the custom is there, the unit 3 is there, and if you see the sold to which we started with, and then you can see the partner function. So it's clearly, it's done a mass processing as well. At the same time, I've created this customer and assigned these 2 ship to. So it's all handled within the Barclay screens of this. And then the next step is there now for someone to go and check it. So yeah, the credit limit can be done after the customer has been created there. So I'm not going to go into the credit limit because, again, as I said, the screens are same. So that's the good thing about Maestro is you don't need to worry about training people using different transactions. Again, if I go into the credit limit, I'm going to get the same sets of views, different views, but same look and feel, and the way it's done, it's exactly the same across the objects. So I think I'm going to end at this stage and hand over to Dan to take you through some of the UI options with this one. So I'll make you present to Dan now.
Yeah, sure. Okay, just sharing my screen. Can you guys see my screen, yeah?
Yep, that's fine, Dan.
Okay, so yeah, as Faraz was saying, that was just a quick demo of customer, but as you can see here, it could be any object in SAP. So what you guys just witnessed then, so a simple creation of a customer master and some additional ship tos, and we've assigned them all to the sold to, and yeah, I don't think we've really got time to go through the credit limit stuff, but you kind of get the overview of the solution, hopefully, from that little demo. So in terms of the UIs, and this is quite important because we focus heavily on user experience and UI options. So native SAP GUI out the box. SAP screen personas, I'll talk about this in a little second. It's now mobile ready, which some of you might not be aware, but it is. And obviously SAP Fiori. So we focus quite heavily on those 2 technologies. SAP GUI kind of looks after itself. A lot of the mobility screens, some of them make sense, like creating a request if it's simple enough and approving requests and having a look at what tasks you've got and things like that. But quite detailed data gathering doesn't really make sense for mobile, even though, all screens on Maestro are available on mobile. For us, sometimes we kind of challenge, whether it's actually a mobile required application. But it kind of makes sense for approval and create requests. If you can imagine account managers at different customers or different vendors, and you want to put in a request, it makes perfect sense. What I want to quickly just cover off is this new UI5 engine. So to talk about screen personas, just a second. It's available in the web browser, as Farrell's was showing you. So this is it. And let me just jump into here and just see if we can do some stuff. So in the latest Screen Personas Service Pack 6, you've got some nice things like analytics, which has improved even further. So there's different UI5 chart options that can be used here. And this remember, is just basic Screen Personas, latest service pack. You can do some really, really clever stuff around analytics. As I said, the whole branding is really important as well. But the great thing about it now is that they're shipping a UI5 engine as part of it. So I'm just going to log on here. Just refresh this page, actually. Pressure of a demo. Just see if I can log in this way. Let me just relaunch this. Okay, so what I was going to say was this is screen personas, but it's now being kind of rendered through a new UI5 engine, which basically means, and we're doing this webinar next month, that you can create and deploy apps incredibly quickly because they'll be mobile responsive, but also the fact that SAP will support you. So I think we're going to do some demos next month. We developed a MyGo app within a day. It's a UI5 app, screen personas, mobile ready. So we're going to show you some of that. But for us and Maestro, the flavors, they become a lot cleaner and they're available on mobile as well. If I go to different method here, and if I refresh my screen, so you should be able to see my mobile. And if I go into my Maestro application, you can see there that, you know, I can go in and I can create a request on a mobile phone. And so this is literally out the box. You don't need an SAP Fiori, the gateway setup or anything like that. It's very powerful stuff. And, you know, we advocate both technologies, Fiori and SAP Screen Personas. They'll come together at some point, you know, looking at SAP's roadmap. Fiori is the kind of go-to technology, but this is the new kid on the block that's going to be kind of merged in with it. So, yeah, different options. SAP Screen Personas is great. SAP Fiori, we deliver standard apps for create request, approve request, reviewing where your task is, and some basic analytics with pie charts and bar charts. As I said, that'll all be available in the browser on Screen Personas now as well. Right, okay, so quickly, because I'm conscious of time here, Ferris, we want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So cleanse. So cleanse is all about, so Maestro is about running your data, yeah, and keeping on top of your data requests and changing your data. Cleanse is about reviewing and cleansing your legacy data. So it's very much applicable for legacy, very much applicable for merger and acquisition data, where you can let Maestro run its business rules over your data set and let it clean it. So I won't go through the process in detail, but it's very, very similar in terms of what we've spoke about. Somebody creating a request, somebody putting in some selection criteria, and then letting Maestro do its work. So Farouz, again, I'm going to come to you quite quickly, conscious of time.
Okay.
So over to you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen, guys. So I'm going to do this quick cleanse demo in the standard SAP GUI. So as Dan was explaining, again, we have kind of built in the whole cleanse application within the standard Maestro application. So again, you start with the request. So I'm going to say, I'm going to do a request type as cleanse data. You select the object from the object, and then you provide the description, the reason codes, and then again, the cleanse might have different templates. Depending upon your needs, you could clean the data just for one org unit or one company code. Again, it's similar steps in there. You know what steps you want: review data, approve data, and then this is where the powerful stuff is. You basically provide, because I'm doing this cleanse for the material object, you basically provide the selection criteria for which materials you want to run it. So I'm just going to say I'm just going to run it for the above material. And about plants, and then sales orgs, I'm just going to say, you know, run this. So this is again configurable. You can bring in the fields you need for your selection criteria. So what I'm doing now is I'm running this report. This is going to go and look at all my existing data within my ERP system where Maestro is hosted. So it's going to go and read my Amara tables, mark tables, depending upon which tables is there. And it will bring in all the data, and at the same time, what it's going to do there, it's going to apply the rules. So you're going to have some rules defined, and those rules will sit against the template. So the clever stuff is it's going to go and read the data, at the same time apply those rules, and then show me the materials that have broken those rules. Now it's not going to show me all the materials, but only the materials that's broken those rules. So all I'm going to do.
Just a quick one. You're missing a validation in your to the plant. You know, the to plant field. You missed
sorry.
validation.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to have the joyous failure that I did on the slipstream demo then.
No, that's fine. It'll only take, So thanks, Dan. So I'm going to do create a request. So what it's going to do now, it's going to go and read, as I said. Now, the load, if the load is too much, then obviously this can be scheduled in the background. I'm assuming, most of the customers would like to run this as an overnight job because we're talking about a huge volume of data here. But because I'm doing a limited selection of data, it's okay to run in foreground. So all it's done is it's gone and created the request, and then again it's then back to standard Maestro kind of stuff. Then I go back onto my task list here. Then I see that there are open tasks against me. So the first one is for me to go and review the data. So when I click on the review data, this is the powerful report which the clients would give me. So basically what it is doing now here is it's listing all the materials and the objects, and it's listing all the rules here in the description. And then I can go and review those. I can click on this and then see what exactly is broken, and then I can fix it. I can see the rule here. You can do all sorts of clever stuff in there, autocorrect and so on, but we won't go into the details because I'm just conscious of the time here. I think we're running out of time, Dan. But this is just to give you a gist of what's coming in the new release for Maestro. So I'm just going to hand over now, and then we'll discuss this in some other sessions, guys. Sorry. So I'm going to make you a presenter, Dan, again.
Okay. So you can see my screen, Faraz, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to summarize what Faraz was showing there. So the cleanse application is specific to legacy data and also merger and acquisition. If you want to suck data in and run your business rules over it for whatever object, then that's what cleanse is all about. And then following cleanse is obviously archive. So we will do another webinar where we just focus on cleanse and archive in a bit of detail, really. I just wanted to kind of finally close up really around some of the areas that we see is worth exploring in terms of why would you go with a solution like Maestro. And it sounds quite obvious, but productivity is huge. So people and time, improving product time to market if you're thinking about Material Master, for example. And there's quite a big area around cost avoidance there, not to mention the IT, your landscape. You don't need to invest in infrastructure, network, licensing, things like that. It all sits within your SAP system. So those are some of the areas that we see. These are some of the things that we picked up over the last projects. 75% reduction of manually keyed in entries is massive, especially if you're going through a lot of data. And we only started with this particular client and started business rules, but even though we haven't done many business rules, it's still populating 38% of the data set, which is quite impressive. So I'll send this pack on for people to see. In terms of the roadmap, I think we've touched on a lot of it. We are now getting the Cleanse app ready for ramp up to customers. So that should be delivered by March. And then following on from that, we then start on archive. We've already done quite a bit of work around APIs and integration into other software, Salesforce being a classic example. We've got some new enhancements to reporting. We didn't really touch on reporting, but if you remember at the very beginning when we were talking about, if I just quickly go back to my main menu, when we were talking about dates and expected completion times, you can see here that there are target dates. Well, we can run reports based on target dates versus actual dates. So all those will come, and again, we'll have some graphical kind of charts to display that. We'll deliver some more Fury analytics. So the product, we've got a huge development team working on this at the moment. It's swamping a lot of our time, to be honest. So why Maestro? Just finally, yeah, it's already won kind of through its design and functionality innovation awards. We think it's simple and yet very powerful because it lives in your SAP and therefore cost effective. and we're quite aware that we are quite a small company, probably one of the smaller partners in the UK. But we feel that gives our clients an advantage because our reputation's everything, really. So, so that was it, guys. I know we've rushed through the last few slides, but hopefully what you've seen there, it gives you some good food for thought around what you can achieve with Maestro. Different UIs that are available. You've got your screen personas and your Fiori, and obviously at the back end within the GUI, you've got a configuration menu that you know, we're quite happy to share some of that with you today if anybody's got any questions. So on that note, Matt, I'll hand it back over to you for any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your time. If anyone has any questions, please use the Q&A tool. We do have a couple in already. First one being, can the fields be amended from technical names or keys to business language?
Faraz, shall I take it or should you?
Yeah, that's fine. The fields can be changed. It's pure configuration there. You can give any name you need to. As I said in the demo, you can also have the F1 documentation. The F1 help can be your own bespoke help in there if you need to. So yes, the answer, you can tweak the names.
We find a lot of the times when we do an implementation that the business language, you know, people sometimes, you know, on the material master or customer master, some of those fields, they don't make sense. So it's easily changeable in Maestro.
Excellent. Another question which was sort of on the back of that last one is, can this be used for amending master data and links to other objects?
Well, I mean, Maestro is specifically used for updating, changing, creating master data, but any object that sits in SAP, like we talked about pricing, we talked about bill of materials, routing, anything that lives in SAP, Maestro can grab, control, govern, and update. So the answer, is yes.
Excellent. So, keep the questions coming. Got another one here. How is Maestro deployed?
Faraz, do you want to answer? 3 transport?
It's a very simple one because as Maestro lives within SAP, so it's kind of an add-on. We send you the transport across for standard core engine as well as for Fiori apps. You need to install it in your respective environments. If you have a gateway, it goes on gateway. Otherwise, goes on core ERP ECC systems. Just probably take less than a day to install it. Probably a couple of hours for the basic guys, and literally you're up and running then. Yeah.
Excellent. Another one here. What skill is required for configuration and material master process?
Yeah, I'll take that one because, like I see it, I used to look after an SAP practice for an end user company, so I know this quite well. So with typical other SAP products, let's take the famous one, MDG, or as it was, MDM. You need a plethora of different skills. So you'll need PI. You'll need workflow, business rules framework. You'll need an MDG consultant. With Maestro, you're probably looking at a business process consultant that knows the IMG. And by that, I mean understands how an IMG works. The Maestro configuration itself is quite simple. Becomes a little bit more complex around rules, but again, you don't need to be a programmer. So it's more focused around business process consulting. You know, and you kind of MM consultant or SD consultant or FICO consultant.
Excellent, thank you very much, Dan. Another one here. Does Maestro work with non-SAP systems? Again,
Faraz, I'll let you butt in, but yeah, we can take data from other systems. We can create Z fields within Maestro if you want to hold that data. So we can actually hold, if you like, non-structured data within Maestro itself, and we can accept data from different sources. So it could be an IDOC, it could be something like a CSV text file, could be a web service. Maestro can accept it, run its rules over it, hold it in Maestro, or process it further in any data object.
Yeah. We provide all different interface options, the APIs, if people want to integrate with Maestro.
Excellent. Another question here. Is there a clear and reportable audit history against the data object requested / authored in Maestro?
Yeah, good question. And it's why auditors, well, the ones that have seen Maestro love it, is because I'm not sure if you're able to show it, Faraz, but every step is date and time stamped. You can see who's changed what. Obviously, we've gone through a create process there, but if you can imagine a change one as well, Maestro will show you what values are there, and it'll show you what's been changed in a really nice UI. So yeah, absolutely. That's one of the big things about Maestro, is the accountability of what's happening with your data.
Excellent. Another question. Have you done any HR applications templates like monitoring of tasks? And if so, would you be able to provide any examples offline?
Yeah, okay. So to answer the question, no. But funny enough, and the reason why we never demo kind of HR info types, for example, is because a lot of people are either running SuccessFactors or Enterprise Portal. Maestro can absolutely do HR. It's just not something we're asked because people run, these other solutions. But Maestro can do exactly what you've just seen on a Fiori app, and it might be monitoring tasks, or it might be creating a new employee. It might be, going through their training or review. Maestro can handle it if it sits in SAP.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dan. I've got one last question at the moment, so if anyone does have any more, please pop those across. In regards to sort of the terms of benefits, what are the biggest areas, what are the biggest benefits customers have received?
Well, I think from what we found so far, it's been productivity. So instead of keying into SAP, because what we find, a lot of people are still using offline processes, and they're keying into certain forms and then keying directly into SAP. So it's almost like a double hit. So there's productivity savings, integration saving, like the cost of our software compared to, having another, whether it be cloud or on-premise system, and try and integrate it into SAP is another thing. But data accuracy is a big one, but we're not able to quantify it as such right now. But we will as soon as we build up a number of portfolio and case studies. But those would be the three areas. What would you say, Faraz, the ones that we found so far?
Yeah, it's just I think productivity in terms of keying in data. A lot of duplicate data can be avoided because people have lots of SharePoint, Excel. They can all be consolidated into one Maestro, because Maestro can hold both SAP and non-SAP data. So I think the biggest advantage is bring them all into Maestro, and then on the back of it, just update SAP. I think that's probably the biggest one. And
I mean, if you can imagine, you've got business rules in place, and a lot of people that we speak to and we demo and we do proof of concepts and even implementation, they don't start off with a huge raft of business rules. But if you can build up your business rules and defaults, then really you're taking away any keying in. And you're just left with governing data and approving data. So I would say productivity and simplicity of running a solution in SAP is the main value driver.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. One more here. So this is from a customer. So if we've appended fields to standard tables using ABAP or developed our own skill fields, are you still able to pull those through? Yep. And is it still without development?
Yes, Faraz, do you want to?
Yeah, that's pretty much possible. That all depends on the object you're doing. So if you're talking about the material master, if you have added a Z view or a Z field in there, then obviously I'm expecting people would have also modified the BAPI structure. So BAPI supports them. We use standard BAPIs to do that. So yes, we can definitely bring in that data, and at the same time, we can also update this data back into the Z fields.
Yeah, so that's quite a typical one. A lot of people do that, and Maestro can handle it. And the good news is, like, we handle objects and areas like classification, for example, MDG, SAP's own product. It handles it, but it's very, very clunky. Whereas for Maestro, it's standard because it just claws into whatever's in your ERP.
Brilliant. So one more question here. I think we'll probably have to sort of wrap up after that one. Does it work on ECC Enhancement Pack 5/6?
Yes. We've got
Simply put, yes.
Yeah, it'll work across all the different basis levels and support packs from ECC 6. Ferrous, we haven't got an ECC 5, have we? Because that's gone, right? But ECC 6 upwards.
Yeah, like we started with ECC 5. The journey started for us in ECC 5, and eventually we gone into ECC 6. And yeah, so yeah, we can assure that downward compatibility if somebody wants to take on that.
Excellent. So that brings us to lunchtime now. Sort of to wrap up, and I thank everyone involved, especially those who got involved in the Q&A. Thank you, Dan Ferros from Bluestonex. The recording will be available. We'll probably get that live Monday morning. We'll pull together the Q&A as well, so you can view that offline. But if anyone has any further questions following the webinar, please drop them to myself or Dan. You can drop them into support@sapusers.org. On that, thank you, and I hope everyone has a good weekend. Cheers.
Thanks, Matt. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.